Chapter 14 of Travels and Adventures of an Orchid Hunter by Albert Millican. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On board the Essequlbo. The Essequlbo was not long in weighing anchor, keeping along the coast, bound for the port of Cartagena. As we left in the evening, and the journey is only of a few hours, we found ourselves in the morning opposite this curious old historic port and city. Its substantial towers and immense walls, with their picturesque surroundings of mountains and forts, give it a more imposing appearance from the sea than any other place I have seen in the north of South America. History is so full of accounts of the sieges and battles, the persecution and bloodshed enacted here in the time of the Spaniards and the pirate buccaneers, that it is almost superfluous for me to recount them. Before these wars the entrance to the city for ships was made through either of two beautiful bays, both of which were excellent harbours. One of these is called Boca Chica and the other Boca Grande. But as the inhabitants were being continually robbed and murdered by the buccaneers, who came in galleys and entered by way of the smaller port, Boca Chica, the colonists determined to stop their inroads by filling up the entrance to the harbour. This they actually succeeded in doing by means of large stones, with an amount of labour which makes the story almost incredible, but at the same time destroying their best port. This not being sufficient, Philip II of Spain caused a wall to be built around the city at a cost of 59 millions of gold dollars. It is so wide that 40 horses can walk abreast on the top of it. However that may be, neither time nor weapons have been able to damage it much. It still stands, a fine old monument and a triumph of masonry. History says that none of these means were of any use in protecting the people. The bands of robbers continued to pillage the town and take away tons of gold and silver, which annually came from the rich mines in the interior to be shipped to Spain, each invasion witnessing the same scenes of cruelty and carnage. The vessels lay at some distance from the quay, but a landing was easily effected by means of any of the small boats in waiting, the water of the bay being generally smooth as glass. As the time spent here by the Royal Mail ships is very short, we were soon on shore to see as much of the place as the time would allow. The houses are most curious, looking like a city of forts. Many of them are spacious and even palatial. The massive stone walls are at least 4 feet thick, and the spaces for the windows fitted with strong iron bars. They are built round a square open court, after the Moorish style, the heavy doors, which form the only entrance, reminding one of the old English portcullis, and though many of them are half ruined and deserted, they give an idea of what Cartagena must have been in its glory. I visited what is called the Inquisition building, the only one of the kind left in Colombia. For nearly 60 years after the then despotic power of the Romish Church had been overthrown it stood empty. It is now the residence of a rich citizen, and although it was once fitted with instruments of torture and prison cells where hundreds died a miserable death, very little remains in the immense building to prove what deeds of horror were enacted within its walls. There are 2 cathedrals, one of the time of the early settlers and one modern, both beautiful specimens of architecture, adorned with the usual extravagant decorations of high-class Roman Catholic places of worship. In the oldest of these is located the famous marble pulpit. The story told about it by the people reads more like a romance than sober fact. The tale has it that one of the popes, who wanted to present the faithful at Cartagena with something to perpetuate his memory and at the same time to adorn the magnificent cathedral, ordered the pulpit to be designed and sculptured by the very best artists of the day in Rome. When the work was finished it was placed on board a Spanish galley and dispatched to Cartagena. In the course of the voyage the vessel was captured by pirates, and the boxes containing the pulpit, upon being broken open and found to be of no value as plunder, were thrown overboard, but by the interposition of the Virgin none of the pieces sank. The English pirates, becoming alarmed at the miracle of the heavy marble floating on the water, fled from the ship, leaving their booty. The Spanish sailors got the precious cargo aboard their vessel again with great difficulty, and continued on their way, but before they reached Cartagena they encountered a second lot of pirates, who plundered them of all their valuables and burned the ship. However, the saints still preserved the pulpit, for as the vessel and the remainder of the cargo were destroyed, the carved marble floated away upon the surface of the water, and being guided by an invisible hand, went ashore on the beach outside the city to which it was destined. There it lay for many years unknown and unnoticed. Finally it was discovered by a party of explorers who, recognizing the value of the carvings, took it aboard their ship en route for Spain, intending to sell it when they reached home. But the saints still kept their eyes upon the Pope's offering, and sent the vessel such bad weather that the captain was compelled to put into the port of Cartagena for repairs. There he told the story of the marble found upon the beach, and it reached the ears of the Archbishop. His Grace sent for the captain, and informed him that the pulpit was intended for the decoration of the cathedral, and related the story of its construction and disappearance. The captain did not seem inclined to believe the story, but offered to sell the marble, and would not leave it otherwise. Having repaired the damage done by the storm, the captain started for Europe, but he was scarcely out of the harbour when a most frightful gale struck him, and wrecked his vessel, which went to the bottom with all on board. But the pulpit, the subject of so many divine interpositions, rose from the wreck, and one morning came floating into the harbour of Cartagena, where it was taken in charge by the Archbishop, and placed in the cathedral for which it was intended, and where it now stands. The story may be taken for what it is worth, but one thing is undeniable: the quality and variety of the marble used, and the richness and beauty of the sculpture, must give it a place among the first objects of art in the world. Besides the many rare and costly altar pieces and carvings to be seen here, there is one object so curious as to be worthy of a special remark. This is the preserved body of a saint. I do not remember whether any name is affixed to the coffin, but the story says he was a great favourite with the people of Cartagena, and when he died they asked as a favour that the Pope would allow his body to be embalmed and sent to their church, and there it is to this day. The saint is placed in a glass coffin, which stands upon a marble pedestal. The body is somewhat shrivelled, but not, as one noted writer has irreverently put it, like jerked beef. Some have described the body as a hideous spectacle, but I saw nothing repulsive about it. The saint appears to have been a man of middle height, and as the body lies there, it is clad in a coat of ancient mail, with a sword and other accoutrements. After leaving the cathedral I wandered about the old city, admiring the many beautiful statues and the curious masonry, until the Essequlbo was ready to sail. Formerly the city was connected with the river Magdalena by a ship canal. This still exists, but it is very much filled up by the forest encroachment, and in the dry season it is almost impassable. In leaving the harbour again we got another sight of the wonderful fortifications. The massive walls of the city are, to all appearances, impregnable, and the ancient passages or covered ways leading outward to the foot of the adjacent mountains are still visible, while the sides of the magnificent harbour are studded with grim forts, which, though now unused for more than half a century, seem almost as good as new. Our next port of call was Colon, so famous for being the entrance to the Panama canal from the Atlantic side. This is only a few hours' sail from Cartagena, along the rugged Colombian coast, passing on the way the Indian Territory and the Gulf of Darien. The scenery is wild and beautiful, and the harbour of Colon is considerably more attractive from the sea than on shore. Although there is the advantage, if it may be called one, of the ship lying alongside the wharf, yet the change from the romantic surroundings of Cartagena to the more modern filth and disorder of Colon is anything but agreeable. With the colossal project of uniting the two great oceans came what appears to be the scum of all nations, if one may form an opinion by looking into the American bars, Chinese drinking shops, and gambling hells, which seem to leave no room for any settled comfort or the formation of a regular community. The houses had nearly all been built of wood, in the most matchbox style it is possible to imagine, before the last fire. The ground floor was a kind of open shed which supported several flats, and each of these flats was divided into honeycomb-like sections, each section occupied by a family or part of one. The number of people and the numerous nationalities at one time crowded into these small rooms is almost incredible. Such a strange and cosmopolitan company as is to be seen in the streets of Colon is rarely to be met with. A large percentage of the labourers are negroes. There are also hordes of Chinese, a few Arabs and coolies, a company of Frenchmen, a few English and Americans, Spaniards, Cubans, and Colombians, and occasionally a band of half civilized Indians from the interior may be seen moving about amongst the stores, making purchases, always in company. Here everything has an air of neglected dissipation, and the motto of Jew and Gentile seems to be either to kill themselves with rum or make a fortune. The place has suffered very much from fire, having been twice almost entirely swept away. The part of the town adjoining the entrance to the canal is called the Quartier Français. An avenue of cocoanut palms, which were planted some years ago, now form a pretty and an agreeable shade. In this neighbourhood are situated the houses of the Frenchmen employed in directing the work of the canal. They are neat little cottages, built of wood, and provided with a verandah, where the new imports from Paris can swing in their hammocks and contemplate the ocean or sunny France on the distant other side. Just at the point of the entrance to the canal, two spacious wooden houses have been built for the use of the famous engineer, M. Ferdinand de Lesseps, while in front of these, on the very edge of the water, is placed a beautiful bronze statue of Christopher Columbus protecting an Indian. This was presented to Colon by the Empress Eugénie in the time of her power. Although at the time we passed Colon the actual work of the canal was suspended for want of capital, the 7 miles already open for traffic were busy with boats and small steamers, while the sides were stocked with machinery and workshops. As the Royal Mail ships lie here 3 or 4 days, travellers have time to take the train across the isthmus to the town of Panama, the Pacific entrance to the canal. In the journey a good idea may be formed of the work of excavating which is being done, and the scenery is good, while the town is very much more commodious than Colon. At Colon we were obliged to transship to the homeward bound mail, the steamship Tagus, everyone being sorry to leave the excellent and kindly captain of the Essequlbo, Captain Buckley. The Tagus was soon on its way to Jamaica. The mosquitoes and the bad climate, together with the filth and disorder of Colon, made everyone glad that the stay here was not longer. So much has been written from time to time about the beautiful island of Jamaica that there is no need here for me to do more than merely mention the port. Sailing along the coast, we soon come in sight of the shallows and the jutting projection, with the fortifications, called Port Royal. As the waves dash up on the sandy beach, the strong light of this climate gives the water a most lovely transparent blue colour, which is seldom seen in more northern latitudes. Kingston Harbour is one of the most important in the West Indian Islands, and is always well filled with ships of every kind and nation, from the magnificent modern man of war and merchant ship to the tiny sailboat that trades along the coast with fruit. The appearance of this island from the sea is very much improved by a range of hills which extends the whole length of the interior. They are very rightly called the Blue Mountains, as they are mostly covered with a thin mist which looks from the sea like a pale blue gauze thrown over them, changing with the rays of the sun to the most fantastic colours. As the ships lie alongside the quay, passengers are at liberty to stroll on shore, to visit the places of interest in the town of Kingston. Some take apartments in hotels to avoid the uncomfortable heat of the ship, others make excursions to various parts of the island. The town itself, although full of business activity, is hot and dusty. The most favourite resorts in the country are the lovely model botanical gardens, which occupy one of the best situations half a day's journey up the Blue Mountains, and the military station which lies far up the side of the mountain, where the air is cool and pure. Last year the exhibition of manufactured goods and products of the islands was a great attraction to Kingston. Tramcars run to one of the suburbs called Constant Spring, about an hour's ride from Kingston, passing on the way many pretty villas in which the wealthy inhabitants of the town take refuge from business. A commodious hotel has been built at this place, offering every convenience for visitors. The beautiful park, called the Victoria Park, is rich with a wealth of tropical plants which every foreigner covets. The keeping and arrangement of the plants are carried out with the greatest good taste. Although a large part of the island is mountainous and uncultivated, there are many fine sugar estates, and the growing of sugar cane and making of sugar and rum occupy most of the labour of the island. Every variety of tropical fruit is in lavish abundance, especially pineapples, many of which find their way to the London market. Some of the oncidiums grow in profusion in the climate of Jamaica. Many of the cottages have quite a quantity of plants, which flower very freely and look extremely pretty. Although the negroes are generally averse to hard work, it would probably be difficult to find a more peaceable, law-abiding community than the coloured population of the island of Jamaica. In the country their tiny hovels are little removed from sheds, often miserably neglected. But in the town many of the houses are furnished with the greatest care and comfort. The inhabitants of the outlying hamlets are occupied largely in producing fruit for the market of Kingston, and in the season of the ripening of the mangoes they seem, like the South American Indians, to subsist almost entirely on this fruit, while the pawpaw, carica papaya, and the avocado pear, Laurus persea, form the dessert. Although many of the streets of Kingston are narrow and badly kept, the houses are built so as to ensure the greatest comfort to the inhabitants of a hot climate. The large, airy saloons, which are often on the second floor, are formed of partitions of lattice work, which exclude largely the dust and insects, and at the same time admit of a free circulation of air, and so keep the dwellings as cool and agreeable as possible. As we had been 4 days delayed at Colon and 2 more at Jamaica, anyone having a valuable cargo of plants from the cool regions of the Andes would naturally be uneasy about their safety in the roasting heat of these ports, so I was only too pleased when we steamed past Port Royal on our way to the island of Haiti. The tag is coasted along the island and then put into the harbour of Jacmel, only to deliver mail and passengers, which occupies a very short time. The sight from the sea is very picturesque, but no one lands here, excepting those who have business, and however beautiful this island may be, very little seems to be known about it to the outside world. For my part, after the journey thus described, I was in no mood to undertake the task. The Tagus put into the harbour of Bridgetown, Barbados, just by way of a call to see our friends, and then betook herself to the 11 days' journey across the Atlantic. As a rule, the large company of colonials who come on board at the various islands are not the best of sailors, and there is the usual period of sea sickness to get over. But long before we reached the Azores everyone was on deck enjoying the beautiful passage, which continued until we reached the Lizard. Finally we reached the lovely harbour of Plymouth, where many an exile who had lived a stranger in a strange land was glad enough to again set foot on old England. The End. End of Chapter 14. End of Travels and Adventures of an Orchid Hunter, an account of canoe and camp life in Colombia while collecting orchids in the northern Andes, by Albert Millican. Recording by Arnold Banner, Thurmond, North Carolina.